Hello, and good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another video of the Morning Commute here on the Roasty Co YouTube channel. It is oh so rainy and wet this morning. It means I'm all done up in my rain suit because the rain isn't that big of a deal. Some of you out there on the road sync. A lot of you seem to be under the impression that riding in the rain is something that you never want to do, or something that you have to be very, very careful about. And yeah, you do have to be a bit more careful when you're out there riding in the rain, but shouldn't mean you can't ride. Should not mean that you can't ride, because you totally can. Last year I got stuck in some of the worst conditions that I can imagine. Just closing the vent there. You have to be careful of a few things when you're traveling in the morning while it's wet. First off, standing water is going to be more difficult to spot and therefore more difficult to avoid. And standing water is one of those genuinely dangerous things that you actually do need to keep your eye actually open for at all times. We got a green arrow, guys. Let's go. Alright. Riding in the rain is also another situation where I'm going to advocate for turning on your brights. It's going to help keep you more visible. Yeah, it's a little annoying for the cars around you, but hey, at least they're paying attention, right? But I wanted to take this opportunity today to show that rain really isn't anything that you have to be very specifically scared of. And it shouldn't prevent you from going out on your motorcycle. As you can see here, the rain's pretty heavy. Now, I am trying to avoid changes in the pavement surface. So wherever the pavement changes from, asphalt to concrete or concrete to paint, or road snakes or anything like that, like I mentioned in our previous episode about rain riding, you're trying to avoid those. And you also want to try to use as much engine braking as you can, although that can be somewhat difficult in the rain. Come on, go into first. Now, those of you that are regular motorcycle riders might be thinking, oh man, that visor is probably pretty fogged up. And yeah, your visor does fog up in this kind of situation. Both vents closed, visor completely sealed. Yeah, my visor is pretty foggy when I come to a stop. I do have a pin lock installed on this helmet. And for those that don't know what a pin lock is, it's essentially a second visor that gets placed in between your eyes and the main visor. It's supposed to trap a little pocket of air so that it won't fog. In reality, it does fog. It just doesn't fog as quickly as if you didn't have a pin lock. So is it a worthwhile purchase? Yeah, probably. I would say so. It's pretty worth it. Just for mornings like this, it's pretty damn worth it. And as you can see, we're not actually going any slower than we normally would. I feel like this is an important thing to say. As long as you're not crossing any legitimate hazards, so road surface changes like that, standing water, road paint, you can get away with going pretty much the exact same speeds that you do when it's not raining. Like I said in my previous video, though, you do want to make sure that all of your inputs are nice and smoothed out. You don't want to give the bike any unpredictable or extreme changes in the controls, because that's when you start slipping and sliding, which is not so good. I'm gonna have to open the oh boy, inside of my visor is getting real foggy. And that's a little life hack. If your visor is getting foggy, open the chin vent. That's going to help get some air up into the visor and help clear out some of the fog. However, it does make your lips and your face a little bit wet when it's raining like this. And if you're alright with that, then it's not a big deal. But if you're one of those riders, it's like, I don't want to get wet at all. Good luck. You're always going to get a little bit wet out here. Like right now, even though I'm all done up in a rain suit, whoop, my feet are getting ever so slightly wet over time because these boots aren't very watertight. I could do some good for myself by getting some waterproof boots, and I kind of wish I had them this morning. But it shouldn't be too bad. That's another thing we ought to talk about. When you're riding out in the rain, you would really do the best for yourself by trying to get as much of your body as dry as possible. Like I said, that's impossible, right? You're never going to get 100% dry. But the more of your body you can cover with a rain suit or with waterproof equipment, the better. Because the longer you're dry, the longer you can ride in the rain. As soon as you get wet, it starts to get cold, and you want to take a break, and you probably should take a break. So, remember, rain suits can make you ride for longer in the wet. Yeah, they're bulky, yeah, they're ugly, but they're not that expensive, and they are worth it. Looks like we are just on pace to get to work on time, and that's good, because I was leaving the house a little bit late. Now, I want you to notice I am going a bit slower, and I'm creating more following distance between me and the car ahead of me. That's important. More important than speed is following distance when it's raining, because your following distance is much, much longer. It takes a lot longer to stop. So if in the dry, you would normally try to keep a 2-second following distance, you want to try to make that 3 or 4 seconds when it's raining. That'll give you a little bit of extra time to get onto the brakes gently so you don't lock up your wheels and spin out and, hurt yourself. I will say, though, I have had many more sketchy situations when I'm riding in the street than when I'm riding on the freeway while it's raining. When you're in the street, you have to stop for stoplights, and at every single one of those stoplights is road paint delineating the crosswalk. And in a lot of cases, you're going to end up with your front wheel right over that stop bar right before the crosswalk. And if you gun it off of the intersection, then you're going to scrub that back wheel. It's going to spin out. And you're going to have kind of a sketchy moment. It's savable. I have saved it many times. But if you would like to avoid that situation, make sure you release your clutch very smooth and slow, like it's your first time on the bike. Road surface change. Now, why am I pointing those out? It's a mnemonic that I use to make sure that I'm not adding power or touching the controls when the road surface changes. You want to try to coast over those changes. That's where you're going to have the best opportunity. Road surface change. Perfect. See, we didn't scrub, the bike didn't squirm. It was just a smooth surface change. And that's what you want to go for. You want to try to straighten the bike up and coast over any road surface changes while we're riding out in the wet. Now, how good are leather gloves for this? Because I'm wearing leather gauntlets right now. Not the best. These are not the best thing to use. What you really want is you want a set of gloves that are truly waterproof. And leathers are not truly waterproof. A lot of times they'll have ventilation holes and water will get on the inside. But leather itself absorbs water. And that can be bad. It can make your, if you're wearing full leathers, it can make your equipment very heavy and very sticky, which will make it more difficult to take it off when you get to your destination. Next, what about your luggage? Well, ideally you want waterproof, weather-sealed luggage from the get-go. If you don't have that, you can get what I use for my backpack, which is a cover. Backpack covers are very effective. If you see there, with the road paint, I'm trying to avoid it as much as I can. If you haven't noticed, there's less commentary on this episode, and that would be because I am focusing. That's a big thing. Focus. You don't want to get complacent when you're out here, because you never know when the road surface is going to change, or a random piece of road paint's going to show up, or a big bump like that. And that could upset the tires, it could upset your traction, and make for an unideal situation. But generally, you want to keep it to some of those tips that I have been talking about. You want to be careful around changes in the road surface. You want to roll onto the throttle and roll onto the brakes. Nice and smooth, nice and controlled. You've got this, you're confident, you can do it. I believe in you. Rain shouldn't stop you because it doesn't stop the bike. It can be a little unpleasant to get a little cold and to get a little damp when you don't want to. But if the reason you don't ride out in the rain is because you think it's dangerous or you can't trust yourself to have the correct technique, go practice. Pick a rainy day when you're not doing something else like working or going to school. Go to a parking lot and practice your regular low-speed maneuvers while you're in the rain. That is a huge confidence-building exercise. You're going to realize you have oodles, just oodles of traction out here. In fact, my friend Sheldon, one that you've seen in a few videos on this channel already, he took his MSF course when it was pouring rain. And he was a little sketched out at first. But after a few hours of doing low-speed maneuvers in the parking lot, it dawned on him that this is really nothing. You know, this is really not much to worry about. Just a few extra things to consider and be careful of. You know, it... you hate to say it, but it's kind of just like how riding in the rain is the same in a car. You want to be careful around slippy areas. You want to try to avoid standing water. That kind of stuff. Same considerations you would give in a car, just you're on two wheels, so it's slightly more important. Like, I'm going to slow down much more for these turns in the city, because on the turns are covered in road paint. And that's going to make me slippy and slidey. If I was in a car right now, and I pulled up to this light, I would kind of be screwed. I would be late to work, but I can filter up. That's going to keep me on time. What the fuck are you doing, dude? Oh boy, that's one of my pet peeves. People that creep up on stoplights. That has never and will never work. Creeping forward at a stoplight is never going to make the green switch. It's a placebo effect. You're convincing yourself that that's how it works, but it isn't. stay at the stop bar, the light will turn green. If you're in a car, the light will see you if it has, coils under the ground or it has a vision system. Creeping forward is not necessary to get the light to see you unless you're stopped way far back. Even then, modern vision systems understand that that's how car riders drive. So they're going to point the vision system kind of a bit down the road a little bit. It'll see the first few car lengths, and it'll trigger based on that. But creeping forward at a stoplight never is going to make it go green. It never will. You're convincing yourself of that, and it's wrong. It's also really fucking annoying while I'm lane splitting to have a car that I'm sitting next to start to creep forward for no damn reason. See, I can hear he is again. How much you want to bet he's going to creep forward on this light too, and it's not going to do anything? Because this light is timed. This light doesn't care about traffic. It's timed. It's always going to give 7th East this amount of time at this time in the morning. Now, because your stopping distance is so far out when you're riding in the wet, you can get into some sketchy situations regarding these traffic lights. Sometimes it'll flip to yellow and you just will not have time to stop. And in that case, yeah, you might be running that red, but it's better than laying the bike down. Traffic lights are usually programmed for cars, and the car's stopping distance actually doesn't change all that much in the rain. At least not like a motorcycle does. A motorcycle stopping distance gets much bigger in the rain, but a car stays, pretty much where it's at in terms of stopping distance. So the lights usually don't give you more time if it's raining. They'll usually just keep the same programming that they run when it's fair weather. And that can suck for motorcyclists because the yellow lights don't give you enough warning to stop. And that could mean some sketchy situations where you end up speeding up as you're approaching a light instead of slowing down and being that asshole. Another thing, when you're riding in the wet, you want to try to keep your gear changes, like that, on straight sections of road. You're asking more of your tires in any given situation when it's raining compared to when it's dry. And when you change gears, you put a shock load through your rear tire. And if you're at lean, that can be enough to cause the tire to just break away and you'll lose all traction. But we are here at the end of our commute. I want to thank everybody for watching week after week. We do this every single week on the channel. This is one of my favorite things to do, is just sit here and talk about things and watch some silly drivers do some silly things like that guy. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week for the next episode of the Morning Commute. Peace out.